Hi, how are you? Today we are going to talk about myth and its features as our first lesson. Do you know what is myth? Have you heard the myth before? Do you like stories in fantasy or you prefer real history? You can now know the answer to all of these questions if you will watch and listen carefully to this discussion. Storytelling is common to every culture and most people enjoy listening to stories. Storytellers have catered for the need for a good story since the beginning of the civilization. Myths, legends, and folk tales are oral narratives that have been told and passed on over a long period of time, and that is a reflection of tradition, culture, and beliefs of the people. Now let's define a myth. Myth comes from the Greek word mythos, which means word or story. A story that is based on tradition or legend, which has a deep symbolic meaning. A myth conveys a truth to those who tell it and hear it, rather than necessarily recording a true event. Although some myths can be accounts of actual events, they have become transformed by symbolic meaning or shifted in time or place. Myths are often used to explain universal and local beginnings and involve supernatural beings. Myths have been used to explain seemingly unexplainable phenomena regarding how and why the world works the way it does or why people behave the way they do. It is common for old myths to have once been accepted as a fact, as in the case of Greek and Roman gods. Now, how are we going to classify these oral narratives from each other? We can classify them according to its theme, its purpose, and its characters. And I'm going to give you also the examples for each oral narratives. Now we begin with legend. A legend is a story about human events or actions that has not been proved nor documented in real history. Legends are retold as if they are real events and were believed to be historical accounts. They usually tell stories about things that could be possible so both the storyteller and the audience may believe they are true. It is part of our nature to share interesting and significant tales with friends and future generations so that they can be recorded and remembered. Legend's purpose is to relay moral conduct, to know what's right from wrong, and the characters are real people, heroic characters. And one best example of legend is Robin Hood. We can also talk about the Philosopher's Stone, which became the basis in one of the series in Harry Potter. And here in the Philippines, we have the tale of Aliguyon. Next, let's talk about folktale. Folktale is a fictional story usually to entertain the audience and sometimes even to teach them life lessons. A folktale is a popular story that was passed on in spoken form from one generation to the next. Usually, the author is unknown and there are often many versions of the tales. Folktales can be comprised of fables and fairy tales. Essentially, its purpose is to give entertainment, but sometimes it also teaches us life lessons. For the characters are common people. It can also be animals and sometimes magical creatures. And our best example of folktale here in the Philippines is One Tamad. We can also have Hansel and Gretel and the monkey and the turtle as the examples. Now let's talk about myth. As mentioned, a myth is a traditional story explaining about how the world works or how things came to be. And we're going to further discuss its theme, its purpose, its characters, and we'll give you examples. A myth is a story, but a special kind of story, and has two primary characteristics: significance and staying power. Its subject matter is something important, something about how the world works, or how the world itself get going, or how things came to be. Staying power is also one of its characteristics. Stories that have survived centuries, sometimes millennia, and this is a testament to the deep meaning or functional importance of these stories to the people who hear and tell them. Now, the characters are deities or gods or goddesses, demigods, and supernatural creatures. And primarily, its purpose is to teach us a lesson with functional religious significance. And the best example of a myth here in the Philippines is a creation myth of si Malakas at si Maganda. We'll deal more examples of these sooner. So I sum up all of the features of each oral narrative, its theme, characters, purpose, and examples in this table here. And you can check and always go back to this in your Genya account. Myths, legends, and folktales are hard to classify and often overlap. Imagine a line like this, with a historical account based on facts at one end, and myths or cultural folktales at the other. As you progress towards the mythical folktale end of the line, what an event symbolizes to people or what they feel about it becomes of greater historical significance than the facts, which become less important. By the time you reach the far end of the spectrum, the story has taken on a life of its own, and the facts of the original event, if there ever were any, have become almost irrelevant. It is the message that is important.